Thabo, a young man from South Africa, unknowingly uncovers a massive global investment scam that involves corrupt financiers, politicians, and criminals. As he dives deeper into the mystery, he realizes he's being manipulated by powerful forces and becomes entangled in a dangerous conspiracy. With the help of a fellow victim, Naledi, Thabo uncovers shocking truths about the true mastermind behind the operation, only to discover that the game is far bigger and more dangerous than he could have imagined, leaving him questioning who he can trust and what the ultimate endgame is. Before we dive into this gripping story, let us know where you're watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Thabo Mokoena's apartment in Cape Town was a mess of empty coffee cups, scattered papers, and the quiet hum of his laptop. It was later than he had planned, but that was nothing new. When he wasn't out with friends or working at his tech startup, Thabo found himself absorbed by the mysteries of the online world. It fascinated him how a few lines of code could connect millions of people, could deceive, could manipulate. He was scrolling through his social media feed one quiet evening when an advertisement popped up on his screen. It wasn't unusual investment schemes and get-rich-quick promises were a dime a dozen, but this one stood out. The headline read, "Earn 30% monthly with secure investment platform backed by leading celebrities." The picture was flashy. A glamorous celebrity in a suit, a clean-cut businessman smiling while shaking hands with an investor. It was too polished, too perfect. Thabo's gut told him something was off, but he dismissed it as just another scam. That was until Naledi called him. Naledi had been a friend for years. She was older, wiser, with a heart as big as the country itself. She had always been the one to give advice, the one with a steady hand in a chaotic world. When she reached out to him, there was a tremor in her voice that sent an icy chill down his spine. "Thabo," Naledi began, her words rushed. "I've lost everything. I put in my savings, all of it. I trusted them, and now the platform is gone. Vanished. No contact. Nothing." Thabo felt his stomach tighten. The investment platform? The one with the flashy ads? It wasn't just a scam in theory. It had real people behind Itriel victims. Real money. "I need your help," Naledi continued. "I don't know who else to turn to. Please, I can't lose everything." Her desperation pulled at him. Without another thought, Thabo promised he'd look into it. He was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. The next morning, Thabo dove into the platform's website, taking screenshots of every page, recording the promises of guaranteed returns and celebrity endorsements. He examined the language they used, the way they portrayed trust. Something felt off. The terms and conditions were vague. There was no real contact information, no clear ownership. It all pointed to one thing, a facade. But Thabo wasn't ready to jump to conclusions. He dug deeper. As he investigated the platform's history, something strange caught his eye. An unusually high volume of transaction activity, linked to a shell company based in Delaware. That wasn't typical for most online platforms. He felt a thrill run through him as he started mapping out connections webs of offshore accounts, false names, and suspicious links. There was more to this scam than met the eye. By the time the sun had set, Thabo's eyes were bloodshot. The thrill of the chase kept him going, even as his mind began to numb from the hours of searching, reading, and analyzing. His apartment, once a comfortable place to unwind, now felt like a battleground. Every corner was filled with the ghosts of his investigation. Printed pages, notes scribbled on napkins, and charts showing connections that made little sense, but hinted at something large, something global. He was about to give up for the night, when a new piece of the puzzle fell into place. A phone number buried deep in the fine print of the site's user agreement was linked to a digital marketing agency. It seemed ordinary at first, but a quick search revealed that the agency had ties to several companies involved in shady investment schemes. Thabo leaned closer to his screen, heart pounding. This wasn't just a random con. This was coordinated, organized, The platform was just the tip of the iceberg. He spent the next few days digging through the marketing firm's digital footprint, connecting the dots between them and a group of international investors. The money was flowing through offshore accounts in the Bahamas, then funneled into seemingly legitimate businesses in the U.S. It was a highly sophisticated operation, designed to look like an average investment opportunity. By the time he had pieced together the pattern, Thabo realized the full scale of the scam. This wasn't just a handful of victims, it was an international web, with thousands of people across the globe being exploited. His heart sank as he realized the full impact of what was happening, and yet he couldn't stop now. He had to take them down. But as he prepared to gather his evidence, Thabo felt a shift. He started noticing strange things happening. Small things, at first like an email arriving that didn't seem to belong, an advertisement for a financial seminar that appeared on his social media, and then a direct message on his professional profile. "Stop digging," it read. "You don't know what you're dealing with." He quickly dismissed it as a prank, but his unease grew. The next morning, he found that his laptop had been tampered with. Someone had accessed his files, traced his steps. He wasn't safe anymore. Thabo couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every time he left his apartment, every time he walked to the corner store, it felt like someone was following him. The paranoia crept in slowly, but surely. The digital world he had once found so fascinating now seemed to hold dark, dangerous forces that he couldn't escape. Then came the break he'd been waiting for. A whistleblower. A message popped up on his phone late one night, an encrypted email from someone who claimed to be a former employee of the fraudulent investment platform. They promised to reveal everything, the masterminds behind the scam, the money trail, and how deep the conspiracy really went. But they wanted to meet in person. Thabo's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The chance to expose them all. They agreed to meet in a quiet cafe on the outskirts of Cape Town. But something about the meeting felt wrong from the start. Thabo arrived early, scanning the street for any signs of trouble. He ordered his coffee and sat at a corner booth, waiting. But the minutes ticked by, and no one showed up. The tension in the air was palpable. Every passerby seemed like a potential threat, every car a tale. Thabo began to wonder if he'd been set up. Then, just as he reached for his phone to check the encrypted email again, he saw him, a tall man in a dark coat, his face obscured by a hood. He was walking toward the cafe, his gaze never leaving Thabo. The man didn't belong here. Thabo felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. Without thinking, Thabo jumped up and rushed for the door. He pushed past the man, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't stop now. He couldn't let them catch him. Thabo sprinted down the narrow streets of Cape Town, his breath coming in ragged bursts. His mind raced. He had to get away. He had to disappear. The man in the cafe had seen him. He knew Thabo was onto something. He couldn't risk being caught. Not now, not when he was so close. Thabo veered into an alley, his eyes darting around for any possible escape route. But the alley was a dead end. He froze. The man from the cafe had followed him, and now there was nowhere to run. The alley was narrow, the walls closing in around him. Thabo could hear the faint echo of footsteps growing louder as the man approached. "Thought you could run away, didn't you?" The man's voice was low, smooth, like he'd been expecting this moment. He stepped closer, his eyes cold and calculating. "You're in over your head, boy." Thabo's mind raced. He needed an out fast. His hand instinctively reached for his phone, his only hope of alerting someone, anyone, before it was too late. But as he pulled it from his pocket, it buzzed with a new message. It was from Naledi. "They found me, Thabo. They're coming for me. It's too late. Please, you have to stop now. Don't let them catch you. It's bigger than you think." Thabo's blood ran cold. Whatever he was up against, it wasn't just a scam, it was a network, a deadly one, and now it was coming for him. Thabo's heart hammered in his chest as he stared at the message from Naledi. They found me. They're coming for me. It's too late, please. You have to stop now. Don't let them catch you. It's bigger than you think. The words burned into his brain. Whoever they were, they had already located Naledi. The same people who were behind the scam were now targeting her. The air around him grew thick with the weight of the moment. He had to act. Fast. But how? The man in the alley continued to approach, his shadow growing larger as he took slow, deliberate steps. You should have stopped when you had the chance, the man said, with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. You've stirred up something that no one should meddle with. Thabo's mind raced. His phone, he needed to keep his phone. It was his only chance of reaching anyone who could help him now. He quickly scanned the alley again. There had to be a way out. His eyes fell on a fire escape ladder at the end of the alley. It was too far, but if he could make it. Without a second thought, Thabo sprinted towards the ladder, pushing through the rising panic in his chest. His legs burned as he leaped up, grabbing the cold metal rungs with all his strength. His hands slipped once, but he forced himself to climb faster, the man's footsteps echoing behind him. You think you can run from us? The voice was close now, barely a few steps away. Thabo's body surged upward, desperate to put distance between himself and the shadow that hunted him. He reached the rooftop, just as the man's voice shouted from below, You can't hide forever. Thabo didn't stop. He dashed across the roof, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had to find Naledi before it was too late. The whole scam was no longer just about money, it was about lives now, including his and Naledi's. He pulled out his phone, his hands trembling as he dialed Naledi's number. It rang twice before her shaky voice picked up. Naledi, where are you? Are you safe? Thabo asked, his voice urgent. I don't know. They're everywhere, Thabo. I've been trying to hide, but I can feel them getting closer. Her voice broke, and Thabo's stomach tightened. He couldn't lose her. Not after everything. Stay where you are, Thabo said, trying to remain calm. I'm coming for you. Just hang in there. I'll find you. Thabo ended the call and began scanning the streets below for any sign of his next move. His mind worked quickly, trying to come up with a plan to get to Naledi without being caught. He needed help. He needed someone who could fight back. But who could he trust? Who else knew the depths of this operation? Suddenly, a shadow moved in the street below him. Thabo froze. Another figure. Not the man from the alley, but someone who seemed to be scanning the area, looking up at the rooftops. Thabo ducked behind a large chimney, his heart pounding in his chest. It was happening too fast. He couldn't keep up. And now, every move he made felt like it was being watched. The sun had barely risen when Thabo reached Naledi's apartment. The city was still sleepy, the streets silent, but Thabo's mind was far from calm. His nerves were on edge, every step heavy as he approached her building. He couldn't shake the feeling that the danger wasn't just behind him, it was all around him. He rang the doorbell. It felt like hours before she answered, her face pale and drawn as if she hadn't slept in days. Thabo, she whispered, pulling him inside quickly. They know everything. I don't know how, but they found me. I think they've been watching us. Thabo nodded, his eyes scanning the apartment. He could feel the tension in the air. The room was too quiet, too still. It was as though something was waiting, lurking just outside the door. We need to go, he said, his voice low. We can't stay here. We have to get out before they... Suddenly, the apartment door crashed open. Thabo spun around just in time to see two men in suits storm into the room. They were fast, too fast. Before Thabo could even react, one of them had grabbed him by the arm, pulling him away from Naledi. No, Naledi screamed. Get away from him. But it was too late. The men were already dragging Thabo toward the door. He struggled, fighting against their iron grip, but it was no use. They were stronger, more prepared. Then, something unexpected happened. One of the men stopped. He looked down at Thabo with an almost confused expression. "You don't know, do you?" the man said in a low voice. "You're not the first person to dig into this. People like you always get too close." "What are you talking about?" Thabo gasped, trying to free himself. The man looked over at his partner, who gave a slight nod. The grip on Thabo loosened just enough for him to break free. He staggered backward, eyes wide with confusion and fear. "You're just a pawn in all of this," the man continued, his voice colder now. "You think you're exposing something? You think you're doing the right thing? The truth is, you're being played, and you don't even know by who." Before Thabo could respond, the men turned, vanishing as quickly as they had arrived. It was as if they had never been there at all. Thabo stood frozen in the center of the room, his mind reeling. Pawn? Played? What did they mean? Who was pulling the strings? The words echoed in his head. "You're being played." He glanced at Naledi, her face pale and stricken. She seemed just as lost as he was. There was so much more to this than he had ever imagined. But now, the line between who was friend and who was foe had blurred beyond recognition. He needed answers. And for the first time, Thabo realized that the people behind the scam were far more danger-ousand, far more connected than he could have ever anticipated. Thabo couldn't sleep that night. He sat up in the dark, staring at the window as the streetlights outside flickered in the quiet hours of the morning. His mind wouldn't shut off. What had the men meant? Who was behind all of this? He had uncovered so much, but there was a deeper game at play here, one that he hadn't even scratched the surface of. Suddenly, the sound of his phone ringing broke through the silence. He answered it immediately. "Thabo, it's me." Naledi's voice trembled on the other end of the line. "I found something. Something big. You need to get here. Now." His heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "I don't know how to explain it, but I've been digging. I went back to their website. It's still live, just hidden deep. There's a back door, a portal that's encrypted. And I think it's a list of every person involved. Not just the investor's very one. Thabo, I think we're on the edge of something much bigger than we realize." Thabo's mind raced. "I'm on my way. Don't touch anything. Don't." But before he could finish, the line went dead. He rushed out of the apartment, his heart racing as the cold night air hit his face. There was no time to waste. Whoever was behind this had already taken too much, but Thabo couldn't stop now. Not when he was so close. Thabo's breath came in sharp bursts as he sprinted through the dark streets of Cape Town. His mind was racing, and with every step, the tension that had been building for days seemed to compound. His phone had gone silent after the call with Naledi, and the silence made his anxiety spike. Had something happened to her? Was she in danger again? He reached her apartment building and rushed up the stairs, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't knock. He didn't waste time. Thabo burst through the door, eyes scanning frantically for Naledi. She was sitting at her desk, her face lit by the glow of her laptop screen, her fingers poised over the keyboard. "Naledi!" Thabo shouted. "What did you find? Are you okay?" Naledi's face was pale, but there was a fire in her eyes, a determination that hadn't been there before. She turned to him, eyes wide with urgency. "I found it. Thabo, I think I know who's behind all of this." Thabo's heart skipped a beat. He moved closer, his eyes scanning the screen. She had decrypted the portal, and the list she had uncovered names, codes, and confidential documents was terrifying. This wasn't just an investment scam. It was a global operation with ties to powerful corporations, government officials, and criminal syndicates. It was a money laundering scheme that spanned continents. And buried deep in the encrypted files was a name that shook Thabo to his core. Jonah Blackwell. The name was familiar, but Thabo couldn't place it immediately. He leaned in, narrowing his eyes. Jonah Blackwell was a financier of the most respected and powerful men in the United States. He was also the man behind the celebrity endorsements that had made the scam so convincing. The man in the suits. The man who had been pulling the strings all along. But why would a person like that be involved in a scam of this magnitude? What was his endgame? Thabo felt a chill run down his spine as he scrolled through the files. The connections were deep, his reach far beyond what Thabo had ever imagined. Blackwell had set up fake companies, used shell accounts to hide the stolen money, and manipulated investors across multiple continents. But it didn't stop there. Thabo found another disturbing detail. Jonah Blackwell had personal ties to some of the biggest players in global finance, including members of South Africa's political elite. The scam wasn't just about money, it was about influence. "This is bigger than we thought," Naledi whispered, her voice trembling. "These people don't just want money. They want control." Before Thabo could respond, the door to the apartment slammed open. Thabo spun around, his heart racing. Standing in the doorway were two men, same men who had barged into the apartment before. But this time, they weren't alone. Behind them was a third man, older, his eyes cold and calculating. Jonah Blackwell. The air in the room froze. Blackwell stepped forward, his smile chilling. "I see you've found my little project." Thabo's fists clenched. This was it. The man who had masterminded it all, the man who had caused so much destruction and pain. But Blackwell wasn't done. He walked toward Naledi and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Such a pity," Blackwell said. "You had so much potential. If only you hadn't gotten in the way." Naledi stood tall, her voice firm. "You won't get away with this, Blackwell. People are going to know who you are, what you've done. It's over." Blackwell's smile faltered for a moment, but then he chuckled softly. "You really think this is over? You're nothing but a thorn in my side, and now I'm going to remove it." Thabo's instincts kicked in. He rushed forward, shoving the men aside and grabbing the laptop from the desk. Without missing a beat, he hurled it across the room. The screen shattered, but that wasn't the point. The files were still intact. "Get down!" Thabo shouted to Naledi. They hit the floor, just as the room was filled with the sound of gunshots. The men in suits dove toward them, but Thabo was already on his feet, pulling Naledi with him. He sprinted for the window, shoving the glass open, and without a second thought, jumped out onto the fire escape. The next few moments were a blur. Thabo's heart pounded as he descended, his hands scrambling for purchase on the slippery metal rungs. Behind him, he could hear the sound of feet pounding on the ground, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. They were after him, after Naledi, after everything they had uncovered. They made it to the ground, running through the alleyways, their footsteps echoing in the night. Thabo's mind was racing, his thoughts spinning. He had to finish this. He had to expose Blackwell before it was too late. But as they turned a corner, the unmistakable sound of a car engine revved to life. Blackwell's men were closing in. They were trapped. Then, in the distance, Thabo saw a figure standing in the shadows, watching them. "Thabo," Naledi whispered. "Who is that?" Thabo squinted, trying to make out the figure. It was hard to tell, but something about the way the figure moved was familiar. He took a step closer, his instincts telling him something was wrong. And then the figure stepped forward, revealing a face Thabo had not expected. It was the man from the alley, the one who had warned him, the one who had said, "You're being played." "Don't move," the man said, his voice calm but urgent. "They're not the ones you need to worry about." Thabo's mind raced. What was happening? Who was this man? The figure stepped forward, his face now visible in the dim light. "I'm here to help you," he said. "I know who Jonah Blackwell is, and I know who's really behind this." Thabo's breath caught in his throat. "Who are you?" The man's lips curled into a small smile. "Someone you'll want on your side." Before Thabo could respond, the man pulled out a phone and quickly tapped a few buttons. The screen lit up, showing a video Jonah Blackwell sitting in front of a camera, surrounded by a group of shadowy figures. "You've been investigating the wrong person, Thabo," the man said. "Blackwell's just a pawn in a much larger game. The real puppet master is someone far more dangerous than you could imagine." Thabo's heart skipped a beat. Everything he had uncovered, every person he had thought was pulling the string sit, had all been a smokescreen. The true mastermind was still out there, and their reach extended far beyond anything Thabo could have imagined. But there was one thing he knew for sure. No, his fight wasn't over.